afternoon, Europe, and welcome to this marathon of the block of keynotes of the Best Virtual Summit 2020. Today, we have with us one very special guest, the Vice Dean of an university that always pop up with the word innovation. So, Jakob is currently Vice Dean at Aalborg University, where he is responsible for education at the Technical Faculty for IT and Design. He is responsible for the digital strategy for education at Aalborg University, and he is also involved in sustainability policy of the university. Today, Jakob is going to talk about problem-based learning, education in the pandemic, digital education, and sustainability at Aalborg University. That's all. Welcome, Jakob, to this opening keynote. The floor is all yours.
Thanks a million, Daniel, and thanks for inviting me to this. I thought it was such a great challenge you gave me in our correspondence. You mentioned no less than those four topics: problem-based learning, pandemic, digitalization, and sustainability. And to cover that in a meaningful way in 15-20 minutes, I thought that was a great challenge. Let me see if I made any sense of it. I hope so, but I'll leave that for you to judge. So like everyone else, we were facing a lockdown, and I'll tell you about why that was a specific challenge to university that does wall-to-wall problem-based learning, and how we handle that significant challenge, and then I'll segue into sustainability as part of telling about our educational curriculum. So in COVID-19, since early March, we have been in lockdown, complete lockdown in Denmark and around the world, with very short notice. I will get back to that. And this includes all students and employees at Opal University. It's a very big challenge to do this for a PBL-based university, and I will explain more about that later. Luckily, although we are not far into digitalization, we had been working on it for years with a very ambitious strategy, actually, and we have been working our way into the organization. So everybody had heard about digitalization. In every single group, we had done early pilots and so on. So we had very little, but within a very short time span, we managed to get things up and running. So it looked like a bit of magic, but we were lucky that we've been working on this for quite a while. So I'll start by telling you about what is Opal University. Our current strategy is called Knowledge for the World, and it has a very specific meaning. We like to do things that has a real impact, even at the time when students are still studying. The researchers should make impact even while doing the research themselves. Like everyone else, we do research and we collaborate, but we also and like everybody else, we do education. But our education is, as Daniel kindly was alluding to, we do a very special curriculum called project and problem-based learning. I'm sure some of you do projects as well, but for many of you, lectures and exercises and so on will take a big part of your studies. Not so much so for Aalborg University, and I'll tell you more about this. So a bit about our journey. We started very young university. We started in 1974. At a time when our local region was in need for growth, and we started very small, 2,000 students, 250 researchers. Fast forward to 2020, where we are in total 23,000 students and a total 2,230 researchers or educators. We are comprehensive universities, all 5 types of faculties. And as I mentioned, Knowledge for the World is about when we ask, or rather when the Industrial Union of Denmark, so this is where employers are organized, where companies are organized, they once a year make a ranking list for who is better at cooperating with their members, which spans, I think, more than 80% of all Danish companies. It's very exciting every year who's number two, because in all the years they have been doing this, Aalborg University has always been number one. So we do things well, and other universities do other things well. But one thing that we do really well is face-to-face collaboration with private companies. And you also see that we are pleased to have many strong rankings, but in a recent ranking which was launched by Times Higher Educational Ranking, where they specifically look to impact. So they embark from the, I'm sure you are familiar with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So Times Higher Education, you might not know, they have actually made a dedicated ranking now for 2 years on the specific SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And it turns out that in our main research area and educational area, which is sustainable energy, we are actually ranked as number one in the world. In all 17 SDGs, we are number 23. So I got this wrong. That's because this is covered. I tried to do this. My picture is covering this. Let me do this again. I'm sorry about this. So on education, quality education, we are number one in the world. In all 17 goals, we are number 23, and on this is what I wanted to say, on sustainable energy, we are number 10 in the world, but number one in Europe. And we have several other rankings where we are received. So many of these rankings are about research, and we get very good. So typically in some of these rankings we are further down this, but in some rankings we are like number 4. But we're pleased to see, since education is a main parameter for us, we were pleased to see last year when MIT had a report commissioned on ranking specifically the engineering programs, that we were number 4 in the world also on this. So, but that's enough about bragging about our rankings. We have another, apart from energy, IT is a major capability for our university. But what Daniel really asked me to talk about was problem-based education, problem-based learning. We do problem-driven research and education, and so if you want to understand what kind of university is Aalborg, maybe a way to map us is to look at our research and education. Say, are we on an axis which is looking like in terms of, do we focus on our research groups, or do we do things more in collaboration? And on the other axis, are we more part of a typical academic institution, or are we looking more for impact? So if you plot us in this, you'll see the European universities scattered in all 4 quadrants. We are far up in the upper right corner here. So we are looking very much to impact, and we do this in partnerships. So that's who we are. So what is project and problem-based learning? It's not just my claim. It's supported heavily by research that students have more comprehensive and persistent, so deeper and more persistent learning when they are exposed to dialogue-based contextual learning. Science is clear about this, and there are several ways to implement this in actual curricula, and problem-based learning is one of these approaches to implement dialogue-based contextual education. So we have, apart from the specific scientific skills, we have a lot of other skills. I'll get back to that. But in every aspect, they develop communication and collaboration skills as part of the model itself. They learn to become analytical and result-oriented, and they're provided the tools for independently acquiring knowledge at the highest academic level. And last but not least, PBL is a way to provide students with experience and opportunity to collaborate, to identify the right external partners on solving specific problems, and doing this already in the time when they're still students. So what we've, as Daniel kindly indicated, we are currently in innovation and development, and one of the realizations we made recently is that when our students are for job interviews, writing applications, and so on, sometimes they are not very articulate about the specific capabilities that we provide them with at our university. And for that reason, we have been going through a very extensive exercise in every study program, which is the official document that states what have you learned in a specific study. We have filled in the transversal capabilities that you gain as a student of our programs. And we've derived a model for doing that has 3 pillars and 1 horizontal dimension. And the 3 pillars are problem-oriented competencies. So that's about identifying, analyzing problems, and of course, including aspects like sustainability, ethics, and so on. Identifying problem types. So everything that's related to the problem. Then we have a column which is called interpersonal competencies. So as you are doing this, you get skills that are related to how you interact with other people. And that's, well, of course, all about teams, team building, team culture, team roles, understanding dynamics of teams in a team. You're not just 4 to 6 individuals. You are also playing certain roles. And as you become aware of these, you perform your role better. When you compose a team, you need to be cognizant of these roles that you're looking for. So everything related to making a team work well and making it productive, and maybe also a nice environment to work in. And also working outside of the team in terms of collaboration. The third column is structural competencies. So that's how do you structure work in this problem and project-based setting. So it's about project management, by the way, a capability that is highly in demand from our customers. Our customers, understood as the people who employ our students in Scandinavia. This is very high in demand, especially in engineering. So project management and everything else that provides the structure for a successful problem-based. So it's about agile management, time and activity management, defining, structuring activities. I think you're all familiar with things like this. In addition to these 3 pillars, we also have a horizontal dimension, which is metacognitive competencies. And the most prominent way in which we exercise this is in terms of requiring all students to develop a personal competence profile where they have to reflect on the skills they have required, and they have to collaborate on how they collaborate and on their career and learning goals. So as you see, there's a lot of words here. These are the actual words that fit into. They do not all fit into all studies, but we have emphasized some and in specific educations to make sure that these are covered by these specific educations where they are relevant. So these are the actual words of skill sets that we make sure that our students achieve. And since they are in the study regulations, it means that it's also part of exams, formal exams, that you need to demonstrate that you have these capabilities. So problem based learning, and I talked about metacognition. That also means that the way you become cognizant of these types of skills is by having variations, and you have the way you have can have variation is variation in problems. So we have problems that are targeted, so well-structured or not narrow problems that have well-defined problem, and you know when you have solved it. And at the other extreme, you have completely open-ended problems that has little or no structure, and you do not have a certain point where you can say, now I have solved the problem. And it's important to make the students comfortable in either of these domains on this whole scheme, working from narrow to open-ended problems and from subject to problem-driven. We also have so that's one dimension, variation in problems. We also have variations in projects, and these variations span these two dimensions, whether you work disciplinary or interdisciplinary, and whether you work in a team or in a larger context. So all our students work in teams, but whether you work in a context which is within the team or you work in larger contexts. So most of the projects we do are actually in this domain, so disciplinary and within a team. But we also have disciplinary projects that are coordinated between. So we have whole semesters where teams work together within a discipline to solve a larger problem. And on the other dimension here, we have teams that work interdisciplinary, sometimes composed from several educations. And this quadrant here has been empty until recently. So Daniel kindly alluded to our innovation, and this is the most recent innovation. Actually, we launched this last fall, which we call the mega projects, and I'm going to talk a little to what that is. What is a mega project? It's a highly ambitious umbrella project that can comprise a huge number of students from across semesters, from across educations. All faculties are involved. They all embark from, the sustainability is very important for Aalborg University. So the mega projects always have to embark for one or several of the SDG framework. And so the component is actually a semester project. So you're still enrolled as a regular student and you have a regular curriculum to learn. But and the project that you do specifically is part of that, but within the framework of a specific education. But the overall project is interdisciplinary, and the way you contribute have to fit like a jigsaw puzzle, a piece of a jigsaw puzzle into the larger puzzle. And the students are involved in formulating, engaging, and coordinating the full project. And by the way, we also collaborate with external partners extensively in this, also other universities. Just to give you some examples, we have 3 projects running in the coming fall, which is Simplified Sustainable Living. The customer here is the municipality of Aalborg, who wants the help of our students to figure out how do our citizens become more sustainable. So typically in Denmark, there's a strong understanding of the importance of sustainability, but citizens are uncertain. How can we help them to gain knowledge that they can convert to action? We have a project called the Circular Region, which is, so the first one was targeted for citizens. The next one is targeted for companies who wants to be part of a circular economy. So if you are an SDG expert, SDG 12, which is about the sustainable production and consumption. And these two have been active since last fall. The new one is Better Together, which is about SDG number 8, which is about decent work. So it's about inclusion in the labor market. If I just to give you one example, um, we are what one project is about. How do I'm sure that most of you know about the Asperger's syndrome, which is which can be a disqualifying syndrome, but basically citizens who have this syndrome have a lot of capabilities. How can you unleash this? Typically, people who have a severe Asperger's syndrome, they are excluded from the labor market. It's a waste because many of them are very gifted in many ways. How can we make use of this? So that's just one example. Mega projects is all about sustainability. Renewable energy is a large education of our university, and mega projects is encompassing sustainability. So we were very pleased to see that the EU recovery plan that was published recently and by Ursula von der Leyen had climate investments front and center. So we hope that we can be part of this. It fits like a glove to what we are doing. So we are very, very enthusiastic about this. But back to one of the questions that Daniel asked me, what do we do about the lockdown? So here's the timeline. March 11, general shutdown announced by the Prime Minister, and it was just 2 days of warning. 2 days later, we had to have the shutdown effective at Aalborg University, and 5 days later, we had 90% of our PBL model online. I'm sure that this might not impress you very much, because I'm sure that most of you have been offered education online. Of course, all universities have been responsible about this and have taken action to put things online. Maybe it's not fair to say, but as I see it, it's much easier for other universities, because going from a lecture, which is usually giving in a lecture room, to an online lecture is in many ways a small step. In our education, we have so many modalities that for us it was a much bigger step, but we managed to get on. I happen to be responsible for digitalization at our university, so I made a reporting scheme where we could track how we were doing, and within 5 days we were on these 90%. There are things that took much longer, especially those educations that had much more experimental work. This was really, really difficult, and I'm sure you had the same situation in your universities. But I was still very satisfied with these 90%. Right now we are reopening the universities, but most of our examinations will still be done online, which means, and these are not individual exams. Our exams are mostly team exams, where the teams are reporting on their project work. So again, a complexity that we needed to deal with. We want the students to be comfortable and acting as a team, although they are separate in separate rooms, but we still want the team dynamics to work in the evaluation phase. So this, I don't want to go into details with this, but this is actually the specific model that we are using, our study activity model. It's a model we developed in order to have a conversation with our students. How do you spend your time? What is the expectation? And we also use it as a planning tool to make sure that we get the load of students quite right. Students expect to be offered educational elements to a certain extent, but they don't benefit if we overload. So it's to hit this exact optimal load that we all of these components that you see here is most of them are, all of them are used in our educations. A majority of them are used in every education. So when we talk about digitalization our education, it's all of this. So a few words about the model. Some activities are organized by our lecturers, and some are organized by students. Some are discipline oriented, and some are problem oriented. So it's in these two dimensions. And then we do problem-based project work. We do individual study activities, and of course we have teaching. I expect you're all familiar with teaching. It has been done for the past 1,300 years in mostly the same fashion, with lectures and courses and seminars and so on. Every university has it. Our university has it to a small extent. We have mostly all the other things, and we needed to implement all of these in a digital way in a few days. Looking at the numbers, I think you can understand why I thought this was very challenging, but we managed, and I'm a bit proud of this. So I'm coming to the end. So where did we see project and problem-based learning beyond the pandemic? For us, it's about, I told you about PBL, digitalization, mega projects, and SDGs. And we see how this all contributes to what we are looking into the future, educating students who are capable of handling global challenges in collaboration with smaller teams, larger teams in networks to handle COVID-19 and all the other global challenges that we are facing. So that's what how are we doing with time? I'm over time, but do we have a few minutes for questions still?
Okay, Jakob, unfortunately, we are a little bit off time as we have a new speaker coming in, let's say 3 minutes. Yep. But no worries. Thank you very much for this super interesting keynote about the project-based learning. I mean, I'm sure like if your university is ranked like the first in education, the fourth in engineering program, like I'm sure university has many more things to teach to the rest of Europe, to students. And like, we are super happy to have you here, like sharing your experience, which we really believe in the organization that is something worth sharing. So like, I would like to thank, well, from my side and from the whole organizing team, to Jakob to accept our invitation to be here in the Best Visitor Summit and share your ideas and experiences. For the audience, I would encourage you to stay tuned here, because in, let's say, 2-3 more minutes, we will have another key speaker with us. We'll travel to Denmark, to Russia, to meet like Dennis, which is the head of the students department at Skoltech. So stay tuned, people, and see you in 3 minutes.
Thanks for your attention and great speaking to you. Bye.